Friends, today we are going to watch another high school action-packed drama. This drama is quite good. It is the story of a boy named Ga-min who just wants to study and get good grades, but unfortunately, he ends up in a school where everything happens except studying. Everywhere, whether boys or girls, everyone is engaged in fighting. Now let's find out how the rural boy will study in such a school in this story. The narrative commences within a classroom setting. The educator was actively engaged in instructing the students, yet none of them showed any interest in learning. All were peacefully dozing off, with the exception of one boy, Ga-min, who was earnestly studying with great diligence. It appeared as though he was the leading student in the class, but in truth, he was ranked second to last in the entire school. Ga-min elaborates that since his childhood, he has aspired to study and achieve excellent grades, having enrolled in every renowned academy, yet nothing ever changed. He even arranged for a private tutor at his mother's suggestion, but even after that, he couldn't achieve good grades. Then one day at school, he overheard a boy saying that if you want to go to college with good grades, you should go to Yusung Technical School. Hearing this, he decides to go to that school. Meanwhile, another friend of the boy says that he would rather die than go to that school. However, the boy from the village didn't know this. He gets admitted to Yusung High School, but on the very first day, as he opens the classroom door, he sees that there's a battle going on inside. There was no sign of studying at all. Seeing this, the boy becomes worried, but he felt that since everyone here is always fighting, by studying a little, he would surpass all of them. However, he ends up ranking 219th out of 220 students in the entire 10th grade, but he still doesn't give up. He thinks that among these bullies, there must be someone who wants to study. So, the next day, he starts observing each of their faces. However, just by looking at their faces, he realizes that they have no interest in studying. Then, he notices a boy who seems decent, sitting quietly. He approaches the boy and asks if he would like to study with him, but before the boy can say anything, another boy pushes him and says, "Come on, let's fight. I need to improve my ranking." In this educational institution, there exists an application where all the students engage in battles to enhance their rankings. Now, this particular boy, who was positioned at rank 173, engages in a conflict with the student ranked 170 and defeats him severely. The defeated boy is unable to retaliate and consequently loses. In this manner, the other boy's rank advances to 170 within the application. The rural boy is unable to comprehend any of this. He assists the boy who was defeated. Subsequently, the teacher arrives with a stick and informs them that instead of the old teacher, you will now be taught by a new teacher, Miss Lee. Ga-min sees that it's the same Miss Lee who was his private tutor. Miss Lee starts taking attendance for all the students, and a boy farts to announce his presence. Suddenly, something is thrown quickly towards Miss Lee, and it was thrown by the strongest boy in the class. He asks, "Who just farted and disturbed my sleep?" A boy nervously raises his hand and hits him on the head and starts to walk away. Then another boy says, "Hey Han-woo, you just threw my coffee and ruined it." He curses under AD, which leads to a fight breaking out in the class. Once more, a fight erupts. He begins to strongly dislike the boy, and all the children start wagering on who will emerge victorious in the fight. Miss Lee was rather astonished to witness this. It was her inaugural day. She shouts at all the children to return to their seats. He comes back to the classroom and instructs everyone else to sit down as well, and they all quietly obey. Subsequently, when Miss Lee disposes of trash into the dustbin, she is startled to discover it filled with cigarettes. She also observes that there are similar drums positioned throughout the school. The children are casually standing around, smoking without any apprehension of being in school. Meanwhile, a local resident approaches Miss Lee to engage in conversation with her. Miss Lee recognizes him and remarks, "You've certainly grown up quite a bit." The local inquires if she intends to teach at this school. If that is the case, he advises against it, noting that the previous teacher departed after merely a month. Miss Lee replies, "You've matured enough to be concerned about me. Leave all of this to me." Then she inquires, "How is your studying progressing?" He says that he wants to form a study group. Subsequently, the villager resumes trailing the same boy and discovers that there is indeed a library within the school premises, yet Sehan visits merely to sleep peacefully. The villager persistently follows him everywhere. Frequently, he visits the library and initiates conversations about studying with him. Observing all of this, the collaborator becomes increasingly annoyed and remarks, "All right, but I will assist you with your studies just once," and then proceeds to explain a mathematical question to him. But he finds out that the villager is absolutely zero in studies. Meanwhile, Miss Lee goes to the vice principal and tells him that we should remove these drums from the school. Maybe this way the kids won't smoke. But the vice principal was just like the kids in this school. He says that removing the drums won't stop the kids from smoking. I haven't been able to quit smoking in 40 years myself. Miss Lee leaves disappointed. From the side, he sees that the villager has noted down every word the teacher said. But those words were from the math teacher and had nothing to do with the question. Seeing this, he says, "You are completely stupid." He asks, "Why do you want to study so hard?" The villager replies, "I want to get good grades." The government says, "I know you are also a student who reads and writes. You have the neck syndrome, which usually happens from bending over while reading books, and you have those marks on your fingers that often come from writing too much. Moreover, your eyes unmistakably reveal a strong desire to pursue your studies diligently." The government proposes that we establish a study group collectively, but Se-han responds, "Are you somewhat out of your mind? A study group in this institution, that individual Han would never permit it." The villager inquires, "Who exactly is Han?" In response, Se-han elucidates to the villager that Han is the offspring of the renowned Unbek gang's chairman, and he developed this ranking application. He is the top fighter in the whole school. He has incited all the students into madness, compelling them to battle one another to elevate their rankings in the app. Inform the government regarding our educational pursuits. He presents them with his academic report card, which he discovered while gathering his possessions that day, along with the accurate rankings. He holds the second position in academic performance. Observing this, Se-on becomes somewhat emotional. The government proposes establishing a study group and attending college collectively after completing their studies. Nevertheless, Se-on takes that result, gathers his resolve, tears it up, and declares that he has no desire to study, then departs. During an event, the vice principal gives an award to that boy Han and says that he is the best student in our school. Se-han was also sad seeing all this. After this, someone bumps into him in the bathroom. Se-han was angry. He says, "Who is this?" But that boy is the same. He starts hitting him. He refrains from retaliating. He states that he will now be required to bring 200,000 won by the following day. Se-han mentions that he does not even possess that amount of money. Meanwhile, Miss Lee begins organizing all the drums on her own. Suddenly, she hears a commotion. She observes that Hans is severely beating him for failing to provide the money. Witnessing this, we attempt to summon 2 teachers for assistance, but those cowardly educators flee from the scene themselves. She herself starts to go and save him. Just then, the villager comes and stops her from getting involved in the matter, saying that he will help him himself. Subsequently, the villager dons a mask, seizes a fire extinguisher, and sprays the whole vicinity, ensuring their escape to safety. He escorts them to a secure location, but Seven inquires about his motives for assisting, pointing out that the individual was merely intending to conclude the situation by beating him. However, due to fleeing in this manner, he will now torment him daily. Se-han expresses his desire to pursue his studies, yet acknowledges that this situation has escalated into a matter of life and death. Saying this, San-jok starts to leave, but he comes back in front of him and he's right. He hits them and says, "I know that other boy was from our class. Tell me where he is." But the right one didn't want to drag the villager into this matter, so he doesn't tell them anything. Even then, he beats him badly and swings a baseball bat at him, but the villager breaks the bat with a single kick. Actually, the villager used to train hard every morning since childhood. He had heard somewhere, strong body, strong mind. That's why he trained hard every morning and made himself very powerful. But despite all this, his grades were not affected. Well, at this point, he effortlessly knocks out the villagers with just a single punch, and Se-hyun was genuinely astonished to witness this. The villager then suggests, "Don't be concerned about being bullied and consider joining my study group." However, Se-hyun still insists that he doesn't want to join. He informs the government that he is aware they are not entirely confident either. That's the reason they've donned the mask to conceal their identity. With that, Se-hyun departs. Afterward, he returns home. Se-hee was relatively impoverished and resided with his father. His father showed little interest in his education. He would often remark that pursuing studies and attending college was futile. Thus, he advised, "You should also abandon studying and acquire a trade, Se-hee." Se-hee responds, "Please dad, enough. I don't want to hear this repeatedly, alright? I'm not planning to attend college and I'll learn a trade instead." His father becomes upset with Se-hee and states, "You cannot speak to me in that manner." Se-han, equally frustrated, departs without having his meal and sits outdoors. He notices his mathematics notebook, which was already quite worn out. Se-han desired to study, but his circumstances did not permit him to do so. Conversely, Ga-min also aspired to improve, but he was not prepared for studying. Since childhood, Other children's mothers would inform Ga-min's mother that their sons had joined a study group. Ga-min should also consider joining a study group so that he could achieve good grades as well. Ga-min also approached other children, yet none permitted him to become a part of their study group. This left Ga-min feeling rather disheartened. His mother would observe him in tears and reassure him that if he wasn't excelling in academics, it was not something to be overly concerned about. It was inconsequential, but Ga-min was determined to enhance his academic abilities somehow. He still reflects on this even today. The following day, Miss Lee awakens. She had no desire to attend that seemingly pointless school, but she was a teacher. She had an obligation to do so. She reminds herself of this and proceeds to the school and she sees that the drums are out in the school again. The ones she had removed yesterday, and the kids are standing around smoking cigarettes. Just then, the discipline chief arrives with a stick, and they promptly chase them all away. Subsequently, they instruct Ms. Lee, kindly remove all these drums from this area. A school inspector has arrived to evaluate our school. They are currently with the vice principal. After conveying this, they swiftly depart. Ms. Lee begins the task of removing the drums by herself once more, when another boy arrives to assist her. This boy's name is Pargun. He suggests to Ms. Lee, it might be more beneficial if we allow the school inspector to witness these drums. I want the same thing, but what can we do? After all, this is our school. We have to change it ourselves. Park says that you won't be able to change this school alone, but Miss Lee says that she will not give up. She tells Park to go back to class. Meanwhile, on the other side, when Ga-min comes to class today, he finds a notebook on his desk with his name written on it. It was the same math notebook that she had picked up from the trash that night to give to Ga-min. Ga-min starts to thank her for giving it to him. Then a desk comes and hits him, and this desk, it was not thrown by him. He says, I know, it was that masked guy yesterday, right? He takes the notebook. The government says, give it back to me. Meanwhile, the school inspector, along with the vice principal, is walking around the school to see how it is, and then they see a fish moving the drums by itself. The school inspector immediately starts approaching them, and the discipline chief quickly takes the drum and leaves. Right there, the school inspector looks at Miss Lee and asks, have we met before? But the vice principal says, that can't be possible. She just joined the school yesterday. They were talking when suddenly an axe crashes through the window and falls outside. Miss Lee immediately runs towards her class. Actually, some time ago, when Misingu was earned from the villager, he burned the notebook here and with the help of an axe. The villager is attacked. However, the villager is quite skilled in fighting and easily takes him down. All the children are shocked to see this, and even the same boy passing through the park witnesses everything. Here, the government just wanted to save the notebook from burning, but it gets completely burnt and ruined. This makes the villager very angry. He tells Yeonbu to apologize to Sing, but he attacks the villager with an axe. However, the villager uses martial arts to defeat him and knocks out the axe with a single punch. He forcefully throws him out through the window. Subsequently, the villager skillfully dodges Uno's 25 and swiftly brings him down. Then, Yunwoo hurls a flaming bag at him. Everyone was observing this, and the villager powerfully kicks the bag back towards Yunwoo, causing him to collide with the wall and lose consciousness immediately. The villager instructs him to offer an apology to the ally before his demise. Sehun was observing all of this and understood how deeply the villager cared for him. Gaon genuinely desired to study alongside him. Sehun now moves toward Gaon, where Gaon expresses to him, please forgive me, I was unable to take care of your notebook. However, Sehun, in frustration, discards it into the trash because, during the attempt to save it, the villager injured his hand. Sehun's demeanor remains composed. I will become a part of your study group. This brings great happiness to the villager. Mishli quickly rushes into the classroom. Observing the flames, she promptly extinguishes them using a fire extinguisher. At that moment, the school inspector arrives as well. They come to the realization that the villager has instigated violence in this place and violated the school's regulations. Subsequently, while Zamin is seated in a room, Sehun approaches Gonvin and hands him his spectacles, which had fallen during the altercation. The villager advises, you ought to depart from here. If the teachers catch you associating with me, you could potentially face punishment too. He thanks him because the villager had fought for him. Just then, the fish and the vice principal arrive with the school inspector. He promptly departs. He begins making his way toward his classroom. As they notice him, everyone steps aside. Then they become aware that someone is following him, and all the children step aside in apprehension as they observe those three boys. The boys apprehend Yeonwoo and escort him to the school's foremost combatant and leader, Han. Han's closest associate, Hwan, is present as well, clutching something filthy in his hand. Wuhan appeared visibly frightened, and from an adjacent building, the boy Park observed the entire situation as it unfolded. Within that room, the vice principal resolves to expel the student in order to preserve their reputation, yet Ms. Lee stands firmly against this decision. She asserts that the blame does not rest with this child, but rather with our institution. We are excessively preoccupied with merely one school inspector, whereas we ought to be concerned about the 600 students in our educational establishment. The vice principal becomes quite angry upon hearing this and states that this boy has resorted to violence. Miss Lee replies that he had no alternative, and based on her observations within the school over the past several days, she believes that perhaps the students here might not be capable of defending themselves without resorting to violence. Upon hearing all this, the school inspector comments that Miss Lee Han-gyeong remains unchanged. He mentions that he recalls where he encountered her previously. She excelled in the teacher certification examination, yet she did not proceed to register as a teacher. The vice principal and Ga-min are surprised to hear that Ms. Lee topped that exam. It reminds Ga-min of a time when Ms. Lee told him that she wants to become a teacher who can leave a better influence on others. At this point, the school inspector asks, "Tell me, Ms. Lee, how can you improve this school?" Ms. Lee doesn't have any ideas, so she tells them about the government study group and mentions that the idea for the study group came from this student. She says, "I will help in forming this study group. By taking this approach, we can improve the school." The vice principal advises, "Avoid getting involved in these trivial matters." However, the school inspector likes the idea of a study group and decides not to expel the student. The next day, the student gets up early to train and goes back to bed before his mom wakes up. He's been doing morning training for years without telling her. On his way to school, he meets a friend. He tells him about their study group and says that our study group will be approved by the education department. Meanwhile, the vice principal sets a condition for Miss Lee, stating that if the study group fails, her contract with the school will be terminated, meaning Miss Lee will be expelled from the school. Miss Lee agrees to this condition. She then informs Ga-min and others that they need to add 3 more people to their study group within 2 weeks. Only after having 5 members will the study group be accepted as a club. Upon hearing this, both individuals become somewhat anxious. But Miss Lee encourages them by citing a quote from Napoleon, and the villager becomes equally enthusiastic. He begins to enthusiastically put up study group posters throughout the entire school alongside her, and numerous children observe them. The villager speculates that perhaps they might attract more than 10 children who are interested in joining the study group. Subsequently, they both settle down in the library and patiently wait. A call is received from a student directed to the government, yet he expresses disinterest in joining the study group. He confesses that he has an affection for a girl who attends the school situated across the street. Could I possibly receive some advice on how to become closer to her? The villager dejectedly ends the call, just as a boy storms in with anger. The villager assumes that they have finally discovered their third member. But in truth, the boy had uncovered that someone had defeated him by surpassing the university, and because the boy is the 3rd-ranked fighter in the 10th grade. That's why he wants to challenge the government, but the government thinks he wants to join the study group. With great joy, he brings him closer and starts looking for a form. The boy attacks the villager, but the villager unknowingly keeps dodging him, and when the door opens, it hits the boy in the face, making him unconscious. The other kids were watching all this from outside. They believe that Ga-min is an exceptional combatant right at this location. They were astonished to witness this, and subsequently, other boys throughout the entire school begin informing others that the boy Ga-min is an absolute beast. He thoroughly defeated the 3rd-ranked individual. At this point, Ga-min inquires if that boy will return here once more. He is unaware of how he lost consciousness. Singh advises him not to wait, as he's not returning. He didn't come here to participate in the study group now. Abruptly, the temperature increased significantly, which frightened us. Ga-min conceived a novel idea. He begins to meticulously observe other children personally because he possesses a unique talent bestowed by the government. He has the ability to discern, simply by gazing into someone's eyes, whether they have the desire to study or not. Consequently, wherever he ventures, children tend to vanish because they have developed a fear of him. Subsequently, he encounters Park. Without delay, he approaches him and informs him about the study group, extending an invitation to join. However, Park responds, "You appear to be quite self-assured, or perhaps you are indifferent to what you're..." The individuals who are arriving will have to withstand a significant amount. After expressing this, Park departs. Meanwhile, Miss Lee observes that following the altercation with the villager, the boy hasn't attended school even a single time, so she attempts to contact him, but her call fails to connect. Subsequently, Miss Lee acquires his address and proceeds to his residence, but no one is present there either. Conversely, Ungami inquires about the reason you wish to become a member of the study group. You ought to consider enrolling in an educational academy or perhaps engaging in online courses. The villager mentions that he has already attempted all those options, but they did not prove beneficial. Indeed, he acknowledges, then suggests not to concentrate excessively on academics and instead participate in athletic activities. You're rather skilled at combat after all, but Ga-min expresses his fondness for studying. Following this, Miss Lee arrives. She escorts them to a shop to lift their spirits, where there is an abundance of educational supplies, and Ga-min continues to examine numerous pens. He also purchases a crimson-colored book, which he was hiding it. Then, while eating ice cream, Sanyeon and Ga-min ask Miss Lee why she chose Yusung High School when she topped. You could have gone to any top school, right? Miss Lee says that after getting high scores, when it was time to register, something happened that made her forget to finish the registration. Now, back home, Miss Lee notices a red book accidentally ended up in her bag. Meanwhile, the villager realizes his book got mixed up with Miss Lee's stuff. Meanwhile, Miss Lee starts calling the villager to inform him that she has his book. However, she notices that the door to her house is broken. As Miss Lee looks inside, she finds that it was Anubhav who had entered her house. He was accompanied by several other boys, all of whom were there to harm Miss Lee on the orders of the boy Han. Miss Lee tells Nori to leave her house or she will call the police. To this, says that if he leaves without completing the task, the boy Han will have him killed instead. Meanwhile, the villager notices that Miss Lee she had previously called. He attempts to call back, but UNO prevents Miss Lee from answering the call and begins to assault her with a metal rod. Suddenly, the lights go out and a boy enters, fighting them off, rescuing Miss Lee and escorting her to the elevator. Meanwhile, others begin ascending the stairs toward them. Miss Lee realizes that the boy who saved her is Park, who had assisted her previously. Park returns downstairs and confronts those guys once more. He escorts Miss Lee to the parking area, but then a significantly larger group of boys arrives. There were quite a number of individuals present. Miss Lee declines to engage in combat with them, but someone strikes her, rendering her unconscious. At this point, Park enters a fighting mode to protect Miss Lee. Meanwhile, the villager had also departed from his residence. He was attempting to contact Miss Lee, but no one was responding to his call. Then he observes some boys hurrying in a particular direction. They were exclaiming that they had located her. The authorities become suspicious. Meanwhile, Park was now managing those individuals on his own. He was quite proficient at fighting with the people in the parking area. He thrashes them quite severely. Then it suddenly dawns upon Anubhav that he has encountered Park somewhere previously. Park is the offspring of that woman who was tragically murdered while strolling along the road, and Park was also stabbed in the abdomen. Anubhav delivers a punch to Park in that very spot, rendering Park incapable of doing anything, and everyone else begins assaulting him as well. At that moment, Miss Lee regains her consciousness. She sees all this and tells them to stop. The UN starts coming to attack them, but just then, the villager arrives and throws him away. However, many more boys had arrived there, but the villager also goes into fighting mode and starts taking them on alone. He even snatches a chain from one of the boys and uses it to fight. Meanwhile, on the other side, the villager's mother watches. Today, the villager is not in his room. He was under a curfew, which he broke today. There, they also find the government schedule, which included nunchaku training that the villager had incorporated. Meanwhile, the villager uses that chain to make a weapon and starts fighting those boys. He was quite skilled in martial arts with the nunchaku, and the villager single-handedly deals with them. Everyone gets scared and starts running away. Then the same boy picks up a glass bottle and approaches to attack the villager. However, Park forcefully pushes him down. Subsequently, Park strikes Yoonwo and demands that he reveal what he knows regarding his mother's murder case. Park was filled with such intense anger that he nearly ended Yoonwo's life. Observing this, the villager intervenes to stop Park, allowing Yoon-OB to swiftly flee from the scene. Due to his injuries, Park is unable to pursue him. He becomes extremely furious. He was unable to uncover any information about his mother's murder on this day. He informs Makli that regarding the boys who managed to escape, she can handle them in any manner she wishes. Justice is non-existent in this place. I'm informing you of this because you bring to mind my mother. After saying this, he begins to depart. The authorities need to manage him. Park advises that you should also abandon thoughts of the study group. A study group won't be feasible in a school like this. Following this, Fish hands the villager his book. It was a book about Bruce Lee's martial arts techniques. Subsequently, Miss Lee goes back to her room. She feels rather frightened and begins to dial the police. At that moment, her doorbell rings. One of the young boys from outside entered the room. He earnestly apologized to Miss Lee, explaining that if he didn't comply with the orders, those individuals would end his life. This boy wasn't acting out of his own volition. Miss Lee responded, "All right, I won't report this to the authorities, but I need to inquire something from you. Meanwhile, Ga-min and his group were anticipating their new member's arrival to join the study group when someone reached out to them. They subsequently entered a classroom that was populated with girls, as the school operates on a co-educational basis. Conversely, Mishli inquires with an educator regarding Han, but the instructor mentions that it appears nobody has informed her about Han as of yet. He suggests that she should cease her pursuit of details about Han mom, as it might pose a risk to her. Nonetheless, Mishli was not someone who could be easily intimidated. She resolves to contact Han directly. Meanwhile, Gram and Sahyok notice the young lady who had invited them to become part of their study group. Her name is Ji-woo, and Sahi-on, upon observing her, remarks, "Let us leave this young lady alone. She happens to be the sister of the boy Yano, whom you had previously beaten." At this moment, a group of girls who frequently bully Ji-woo approach her. They begin to strike Ji-woo's friend, Hee-won, as well. But Ji-woo firmly grasps her hand and declares, "I have told you before, you can hit me as much as you desire, but do not lay a finger on Won." The girl slaps Ji-woo once more and kicks her to the ground. Then she spits gum onto Ji-woo and Won's study plan. However, at that very moment, Ga-min steps in and intervenes. He saves them. He looks at Ji-woo and Won's study plan with great interest, and just then, a boy named Jin arrives wearing a different kind of uniform. He recognizes Ga-min as the guy who had previously humiliated him. He says, "Ji-woo is my girlfriend, so what are you doing with her?" Just then, Seha arrives and takes him away. Here, Jin now tells Ji-woo that since she talked to another boy again, she will have to be punished by being hit 3 times. He starts hitting Ji-woo's hand with a stick 3 times. She was also forced to listen to him for some unknown reason. However, Gambir arrives at the scene and prevents that from happening. He flicks a piece of chewing gum at this boy, and upon witnessing this, Jin is on the verge of hitting Ga-min when the discipline chief arrives and intervenes. Jin informs Ga-min that he will handle him later and then departs. Subsequently, Sion discovers that the individual he just had a conflict with is a member of the disciplinary committee. At that moment, Ji-woo's friend Won arrives. She informs them, "I was the individual who signed the application for the study group using Ji-woo's name, and in fact, these days, Ji-woo is experiencing a significant amount of bullying. It all began when those girls used to bully me, but Ji-woo came to my rescue. However, that is not the reason Ji-woo is currently being bullied. She mentions that none of the girls could compete with Ji-woo in a fight, and that's why they ceased bullying me. But then, a while ago, her brother Anbu was delivering something during his job when someone attacked and took all his money. And then when he went to the same boy to borrow money, the boy promised to lend him money. He stole a little money from a place and recorded a video of it. After that, he gave a lot of money to Junwoo. But because he now had a video showing Ji-woo's brother stealing money, he started blackmailing Ji-woo with that video. After this, all the girls also started bullying him. She says that soon I will also be transferred, and that's why I want to do something for Ji-woo before I leave. The transfer is going to occur, and that is precisely why I wish to do something meaningful for Ji-woo before my departure. She expresses, "I am prepared to become a member of your study group, just ensure that this video is somehow erased." The villager promptly consents. Even Pa observes Won's innocent expression and softens, agreeing to undertake the task. Meanwhile, within the discipline committee room, 2 members discover the pen drive. They come to the realization that this must indeed be the video with which the young boy is blackmailing Jin. However, before they have the opportunity to view it, Jin arrives and begins to throw them around. But then he states, "If you wish to watch the video, go ahead. Regardless, I am planning to upload this video shortly." He informs them that he did not lend Yoon-woo money from his own pocket. Instead, it was Yoon-woo's own money that he returned to him and recorded the video, and it was entirely Han's scheme. He is undoubtedly a genius. At this moment, Ga-min had already concealed himself within the cupboard and had overheard every detail, preparing himself for a confrontation. Meanwhile, Miss Lee was engaged in a conversation with Han. She states, "I have discovered everything. You manipulated that boy Yoonu, which is the reason he followed your every directive and was even willing to harm others. You have exploited him sufficiently, so now release him." However, Han responds, "Is this the sole reason you summoned me here? I was informed you were assembling some group. You're forming a group? I thought you would be an interesting person, but you're just like everyone else. He is not coming to school, then ignore him, but Miss Lee refuses to be influenced by his words." Meanwhile, the villager comes out of the closet and knocks down those boys. He notices the pen drive that was inserted in the CPU. For some time, the government keeps fighting with Jin and cleverly takes out the pen drive and keeps it with him. After that, he starts to play Jin, who was nothing in front of him in the fight. He starts to leave after beating the villagers. But then 2 more members arrive here. The government pulls them inside as well. From a distance, Sahayan and Van were watching all this. They felt that the villager was in danger. Sahi suggests, Let's pretend to fight. You shout at me and curse loudly, then we'll start fighting. When the discipline committee members come to break up our fight, Ga-min will be able to escape. But Phone says, I've never shouted or cursed at anyone and I can't do it. Just then, Ji also arrives there. Meanwhile, in the room, the villager is alone. He was in the process of saving everyone, and during the intense struggle, the pen drive unexpectedly falls to the ground. The villager quickly seizes it, but the boys exert all their efforts to wrest it away from him. Then Jin rises and declares that he had already duplicated the video onto the computer, and now Jin commences the process of uploading that video to the internet. Observing this, the villager endeavors with all his might to liberate himself, and simultaneously, Ji-woo becomes aware of the entire situation. She begins making her way towards the room to confront Jin. However, at that moment, the villager lifts the entire computer and makes a dash for the outside. He proceeds onward. He was in the process of fleeing with it, but then his foot unexpectedly slips and the CPU rolls over accurately. It ends up reaching them. The government halts all the members of the discipline committee and informs them that this is indeed the same video. Escape with it. Sayo observes Jin approaching him and begins to flee with it. He dashes up to the rooftop, but Jin also arrives there shortly after. Then Sayo hurls the entire CPU down from that height, completely destroying it. Witnessing this, Jin now begins advancing to attack him. Just then, Ji-woo makes her entrance. She lifts Jin and hurls him down, declaring that the video is now completely gone. You are no longer able to blackmail me, she states, and throws him down once more, finishing him off. Meanwhile, Parhan advises Fish that you should not give excessively to your students, as you will soon come to regret it. Following this, we observe Yunvo, who was making his way towards the school. At this point, the discipline chief had apprehended the government, and just then he observes that the pen drive has fallen. He informs Won about it, but before she had the chance to retrieve the pen drive, the very same bully girl seizes it and becomes aware that it holds the incriminating evidence against Jin. She begins to depart with the pen drive in her possession. At that precise moment, she gathers her courage and shouts at the bully, which provokes her, causing her to charge towards her with the intent to attack. Nevertheless, Won manages to push her aside and swiftly snatches the pen drive. Ji observes this scene as it unfolds and commends Won for her courageous act. Meanwhile, a boy was in the process of carrying Jin back, and then he arrives here. Han disclosed to Yunvo the complete truth, elucidating that it was Jin who had disguised himself and attacked you on that night. He took your money and subsequently lent it back to you. Due to your video, he also blackmails your sister. Indeed, he hands him a knife, and after discovering all of this, Yunvo stabs Jin. However, Miss Lee intervened in the situation. She managed to save Jin, but in truth, her intention was not to save Jin, but rather to protect Yeonwoo. She had come to the realization that Ji-woo and Yeonwoo are left with no one else in this world, and both of them exert themselves tirelessly. Although Ji-woo is older than Yeonwoo, Yeonwoo still takes care of her. If Yeonwoo had gone through with stabbing Jin, he would have faced imprisonment for a lifetime, which Miss Lee successfully prevented from occurring. This ordeal was also quite painful for Miss Lee, as she ended up being stabbed. She states, "Do not give up, I am here to assist you," but because of her severe injuries, she loses consciousness. At that moment, a villager arrives promptly and transports her to the hospital without delay, where she receives medical treatment in the operating room for an extended period. Shortly thereafter, Ji arrives to visit Miss Lee. She musters the courage and confronts them, ensuring that Miss Lee's life is preserved. Indeed, Ongami and Van are present as well, and Ji also encounters them. Miss Lee offers an apology on behalf of Yeonwook and explains that she personally handed him over to the authorities. He will certainly face consequences for his actions. However, Miss Lee inquires, "You're planning to join our study group, aren't you?" One confirms that she is indeed joining the study group and has decided not to transfer from this school any longer. GOB now becomes a member of the study group, which brings a great deal of happiness to everyone involved. Following this, the four of them proceed to the library together. The villager had established a group which still had an available spot for a fifth member. At that precise moment, it is disclosed that Han has also been apprehended by a detective for some unspecified reason. They speculate that Han might potentially be sent to a detention facility due to his actions. Just then, something shatters through the window and someone lets out a scream, summoning the villager outside. The villager peers out the window and observes that the top fighter of the 11th grade had arrived, and after defeating someone, the proclamation of Graham's master status spread extensively across the whole school, and given that Jin was in the 11th grade, the leading fighter of that grade now wishes to challenge Graham. He calls upon Graham for a showdown and introduces a young boy named Jun, who showed interest in becoming part of the study group. However, this boy obstructs him from joining the study group and also mocks it. Witnessing this, Graham descends from the building and overpowers the boy with merely a single punch. June was quite amused watching all of this unfold. Then June explains that he always wanted to be number one in fighting since childhood, but he was quite bad and weak at it from the start. Anyone who came would easily beat him, but June didn't give up. He started training hard, but it didn't make much of a difference. Then he also overheard a boy mentioning that if you aspire to become strong, you should attend Yusung Technical High School. Upon hearing this, he made the decision to come to Shanghai. On the very first day, when he opened the room door, there was a battle occurring inside, which was nothing short of paradise for June. After arriving here, he exerted a great deal of effort and began elevating his rank in the app through fighting. However, no matter how diligently he tried, he couldn't surpass rank 17. Then, one day, he observed a rural individual engaging in a fight and decided to join the study group. But now, after knowing all this, the villager refuses to take Jin into the study group and says that we created this study group for studying, not for increasing rankings in 5-tap. Jun says that if you don't want to let me join your group, then at least teach me how to fight, but Gamir doesn't agree. Then Jo says, "Alright, I'll study with you guys." Hearing this, Gamir tells him, "Are you sure you'll study?" and gives him a test with some questions to solve. Then Jun sits alone and starts solving the questions. He begins working on solving the question. After some time, an individual from the renowned YB gang arrives, searching for the government, and inquires if Jin is a villager. Jin concurs, and the man erroneously identifies Jun as a villager and begins to escort him away. The same boy was observing from the park. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a detective arrives at the hospital to meet Miss Lee. He was already acquainted with Miss Lee. At this point, June was accompanying that man somewhere. He recalls how, during his childhood, when other kids would beat him up, his companion Auntie frequently came to his rescue. Auntie had faith that Jin would grow into a formidable individual one day, but as time went on, Auntie became a member of the well-known YB gang, leaving Jin in the past. However, on this particular day, Jin was also on the verge of joining the very same gang. The man escorts Jin to an isolated location and informs him that in order to become a part of their gang, he must successfully complete a test. If he manages to reach the vehicle and retrieve its keys, he will succeed in passing. And that automobile will belong to you, but 3 individuals will attempt to prevent you from reaching it. Subsequently, their confrontation commences. Meanwhile, when everyone else returns to the library, they do not find June present there. At that moment, Park arrives to inform them of everything. On the other side, June had been severely beaten. The man realizes that this boy is not earnest. He strikes Jin, and just then, the villagers Juhi and Park arrive to rescue Jin. Holding Jin's result, they declare that you have successfully passed the test to join the study group. At this point, the gang member realizes by looking at the government official that this is Gonvin with glasses. He then tells Gonvin, "Let's start your test now. If you can rescue your friend from me, you'll pass." Meanwhile, on the other side, the detective was talking to his colleague. He says, "Who was that boy? He came to the station that day and left so calmly, and he knew about me, even though I'm newly transferred here." To this, his senior says, "Ignore this and let things unfold as they will." At that particular moment, the detective observes 2 high school students below. They are the individuals who came to notify the police to rescue everyone else. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, the villager Jibu and Park commence fighting with all those individuals. Parkod and Jibu were effortlessly defeating them, and the villager also utilizes a piece of paper as a weapon to strike the boy, seizes his knife, and knocks him down. While engaged in combat, he assists both Park and Jibu, and then he proceeds to confront the man from the same gang. However, that particular man was significantly stronger than the others. He manages to skillfully evade Ga-min and begins launching an attack on him instead. Subsequently, Ga-min, Park and Jibu all collaborate to counterattack him, but he skillfully evades all 3 of them and resumes his assault. Following this, Ga-min enters into a full combat mode. He employs a special technique imparted by his master, which his master had advised him to reserve for only the most critical situations. Now, utilizing that technique, Ga-min severely beats the man, pins him against the wall and punches him with his fists, effectively finishing him off. Park and Jibu. They were surprised. After this, Park goes to question the man about his mother's murder case. Just then, the car that had been parked starts moving towards the villager, but Jin gets up at the right moment and saves the government. After that, Han's same partner emerges from the car. He tells the villager, "Why, you're quite interesting. Will you join our gang? You could get a manager's position." But the government refuses and says, "I will go to college with my friends." He ridicules them and subsequently notices Park. He possessed some knowledge regarding Park's mother's murder case, which prompts him to begin departing from that location. Park continues to pursue him in an effort to uncover the complete truth. Sahyeon and Won had similarly arrived along with the police, resulting in the gang members' arrest. The detective informs everyone that the current situation at the police station is not favorable these days. Corruption is widespread everywhere, so I can't assure you of anything. But if something similar happens again, here's my business card. Contact me without hesitation. After this, the detective departs from that location. The villager also makes his way directly back home. He tells his mother that he is on his way. Actually, his mother had imposed a curfew on him, requiring him to be home before 10 p.m. However, for the past few days, he has been repeatedly breaking his curfew, which is starting to make his mother angry. Meanwhile, the detective tells Miss Lee that with the help of the study group kids, they have managed to catch some thugs, and from their statements, they might be able to arrest Han as well. Miss Lee is very happy to hear this. Meanwhile, Han had given Miss Lee and the local a 4-star rating in his view, meaning that both individuals are proving to be quite dangerous for Han. Upon reaching home, all the members of the study group begin engaging in conversation. Jin had also arrived at the hospital and has since recovered. The following day, the student from the countryside initiates his training session early in the morning, and subsequently, they commence concentrating on their study group's endeavors. They all engage in studying collectively, and when the disciplinary committee members attempt to penalize them without just cause, Ms. Lee, who has recuperated and resumed attending school, comes to their rescue, and everyone is exceedingly delighted to see her. Afterward, she proceeds to the vice principal and presents some documents that contain the names of the 5 study group members. The vice principal is astonished to witness this. Ms. Lee also mentions that they did not file any case against the boy Yunvo because she did not want Yunvo to go to jail, and he was only sent to a detention center for a short time. After this, she tells the principal that she wants to call a disciplinary committee meeting regarding the boy An. The principal gets angry upon hearing this. Ms. Lee leaves from there. Then it is shown that last year, a teacher also had a meeting called on Han regarding the disciplinary committee. A disciplinary committee meeting ought to have been convened. The principal recalls that particular occasion. Meanwhile, Miss Lee informs Ga-min and all the others that our group has now been formally recognized as a club. Consequently, we shall be allocated our own dedicated room, and our initial activity will be a study group exchange meeting, during which you will have the opportunity to meet and learn from the study groups of other educational institutions. Following this, they prepare themselves in a rather unusual manner to travel to Seoul. Everyone was observing them. Subsequently, 2 boys attempt to initiate a confrontation with them, and Ji-woo and Jeon impart a valuable lesson, compelling them to apologize sincerely. Following this, Miss Levy makes her entrance. Nevertheless, the student from the rural area had not yet arrived. He remained on the bus. They proceed to the university without his presence, where they were scheduled to meet another study group. Miss Lee was acquainted with a teacher there who had organized everything meticulously. Miss Lee informs them, "You all ought to send a message to Graham, instructing him to proceed directly to this location." Subsequently, they proceed to the study group's designated room at this educational institution, where their allocated space was notably impressive. Nevertheless, those individuals disregard them even after noticing their presence. Ji remarks, "Hey, Redwall folks, did you hear that they're subtly labeling us as uncultured?" At this point, they also discover that a member of this study group has not yet arrived either. "It's alright. One of our members hasn't arrived yet either. That's why we can start the meeting a little later." After this, they sit facing each other. Sehan and Boon were quite nervous, but Jeevu Arjun could clearly see that they were silently calling them unsophisticated. Jin asks, "Where did the last member go? Did you message them?" She nods affirmatively. Just then, Jun notices that Jeevu had made a spelling mistake while writing the school's name and had written Manilkai instead of Manilhai. She says, "Maybe, but there might be a school with this name," and the villager had found a school with the same name and started heading there.